Hi, thanks for tuning in. Growing up, I faced a lot of struggles. I was unpopular. I was rejected by darn near everybody. It was common for those who befriended me to lose their other friends. I was that kid that the team captains in gym class fought over for who would get stuck with me. Yes, I was bullied too. And at the time, I blamed all of it on being the only diabetic in school. Yeah, it's the only thing I could figure out. That or because my parents were divorced, which was in my community. By the time I reached junior high and high school, the isolation actually worked in my favor, though, because if I had any social life at all, my stepfather would take it out on my mom. So I stayed home to protect her. I hibernated in the sewing room. The silver lining in that cloud was that by the time I started college at 16, kind of the yuppie version of running away from home, by the time I started college, I had one gorgeous kicker wardrobe that I wish I still fit into. That's another story. But my mom tried to help me back then. She dragged me to tea classes, transcendental meditation. You know what that is? Yeah, you sit on the floor with your arms, palms up on your knees, and you do a lot of breath work. The word they assigned me to meditate on was flower. Flower. And I thought it was the most ludicrous, stupid, idiotic thing in the world. So then my mom thought she'd drag me to therapy and see if that worked any better. And I thought that was a complete waste of time. Does that feel familiar to you? I often thought of the irony that I ended up being the clinical director of an inpatient psych unit that rented a wing of a private psych hospital that was run by the psychiatrist from that private practice that my mom had dragged me to all those years before. But when I was 16, academically, I was ready for campus life. I made straight A's, but socially, not so much. I completely lacked the social awareness to understand people's true intentions. Setting myself up for a lot of things, putting myself in dangerous situations time and time again without realizing it. Not that I recognized this until much later in life. In fact, it was only in my mid-50s that I looked back at my childhood and those challenging transitional years with a different lens than I had ever used before, and found that suddenly everything made sense. So what caused this shift in my perspective? It was actually just putting together a few statistics that did the trick, but we'll get to that in a bit. At the time, I had been working for over 30 years in addictions and mental health and child welfare. I decided to learn about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, or FASD, because I had questions. I was sick and tired of watching kids fall through the cracks and watching families give up on being a source of hope and healing for kids that had experienced so much heartache at a young age. And it did give me those answers. Over 70% of kids in care are exposed to alcohol. Not only was I able to immediately put hundreds of little faces to what I was learning, but what I was learning resonated with my own childhood and transitional and even adult experiences. So I asked my mom, "Did you drink when you carried me?" Her answer was like a mic drop. "Oh yeah, every day," with such a tone of surprise that belied her unspoken question of, "Doesn't everybody?" But I don't blame her. How could I? It was the early 1960s and nobody knew back then the havoc that alcohol wreaks upon developing babies' brains and bodies. I learned that alcohol, which is a solvent, changes every cell that it contacts because cellular walls are made of fats, which are dissolved by solvents like alcohol. Especially vulnerable are the structures being formed and the functions being programmed at the time of exposure. The various systems within our bodies develop at different times. So no two people are affected the same way. But our brains develop every single day throughout the pregnancy. And as our body's command center, these changes affect potentially everything. I learned that FASD can be viewed as a physical disability with behavioral symptoms because 90% of the time you see no evidence that anything is amiss. I learned that behaviors are not moral. They reveal how a living organism functions. That's all they do, whether plant, animal, or person. Behaviors are neither good nor bad. They're neither right nor wrong. They just are what they are. And if we do something that is unexpected or counter to what the people in our lives would wish, then the question becomes, what is the obstacle? What's hard? What's causing the interference in our being able to do things the normal way? I learned that just because nearly everyone assumes that all behavior is the result of a choice or intention doesn't make it so. After all, the whole world used to think the earth was flat too, but we got over that one, didn't we? I look at behavior using a computer analogy. This might help you too. Our brain structure is the hard drive. The operating system is comprised of brain tasks, or the micro steps that everyone's brain must do in order to get X, Y, or Z done. It includes things like working memory or generalizing knowledge from one situation to another, or being able to sequence things, being able to compare things, process abstract concepts, or manage sensory stimulation. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, all that is entailed in our operating system. And the expectations of other people, or even our own ideas, are the software programs. When alcohol damages the hard drive, the operating system malfunctions, leading to problems with the software not working as expected. These are the glitches that we face each and every day, numerous times. So if a behavior results from this process, it's considered a primary characteristic because it directly reflects the changes in the way that our brains function because of the alcohol exposure. Secondary symptoms, on the other hand, are preventable. They are manageable and can go away with proper supports, but they include bad behaviors that are actually protective reflexes from deep within our brains that happen whenever that survival part of our brain says, danger, will run, danger. We have no conscious control or input into the decision-making, what we're going to do in response. It happens that fast. And so what happens is some variation of fight, flight, freeze, or fawning. And again, it's beyond our conscious involvement. It just happens, not from the damage that is from the injury itself, but instead it's from that mismatch between the way that our brains work and what other people expect. kind of making it their problem. Secondary symptoms then are clarion calls to our struggles and the need for help to get things done. These behaviors, though, they're the reason we get dragged into therapy, where well-intentioned people try to help us find the motivation to make different choices without considering what our survival instincts were trying to guard us, to protect us from in the first place. However, these interventions are doomed to fail in the long run because motivational strategies can never undo physical changes from before we were born. I've had so many parents tell me that therapy made their children's behaviors worse. Well, is it any wonder? Our deepest needs include understanding ourselves and feeling accepted and loved. And when people are punishing us for making wrong choices rather than recognizing that we're struggling, how are we going to feel seen, heard, understood, valued? If no one recognizes that we can't meet other people's expectations in a normal way, we're not going to get that validation that every human being craves. So we continue to argue, fight, shut down, isolate, run away, become a chameleon, or turn to bury our pain, our fear, our frustration in addictive substances or behaviors. So, what are those statistics that helped me put 2 and 2 together? 1 in 7 pregnancies is exposed to alcohol. 1 in 20 people fall within the diagnostic criteria of FASD, and yet 0.01 of us ever get a diagnosis. I took these last 2 statistics and I applied them to the census data. You know what I found? I found nearly 15 million adults in the US alone are unaware that their lives have been more challenging, not because they made bad choices, not because they are bad or lazy or selfish or any other insult that we've been labeled with through the years that shaped the way we viewed ourselves. No, none of that. It's because alcohol affected the way our brains and bodies were formed. And that was entirely out of their control. How could they be in control of those things while still in the womb? I found that changing the way I view behavior was like getting a new prescription for my glasses. All of a sudden, life came into a clear focus in a way that made sense for the first time. If you're still watching this, I'm guessing that I'm speaking to your heart. I'm guessing that you might be thinking maybe this FASD lens will work in my classes too. If so, I can help you identify how prenatal alcohol exposure has shaped your unique combination of challenges and strengths and interests and learning style preferences, all of that and more. I can help you get the patch for your glitches. I can help you create the workarounds for your primary characteristics, make those secondary symptoms a thing of your past. Please reach out to me by email at contact@patriciacasper.com, Casper's with a K, or you can use my Calendly link to book an initial appointment to chat about how I might be of service. Thanks for watching.